Hey.
Thank you.
Can you hear Tom?
Yeah, mute Matt. Okay. Good enough. Hi, this is Tommy John, Rubbing Elbows with Tommy John, brought to you today by Michael Schwartz. Michael is in the medical business, and he also does some stand-up comedy. He thinks he's a Jerry Seinfeld, but he's a long way from that. But anyway, thank you for joining us. And we've got one of the great ball players to ever play the game. And he was a teammate of mine for 7 years with the Dodgers, Steve Garvey. Garv, how you doing?
Great, Tommy. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to spend a little time with you and go back to the way we were.
That was young and broke.
That's right. Making $12,000 a year, right?
You got very well paid. I made my first 2 years in the big leagues, $7,000 a year, and I thought I was killing it.
Right. That's funny.
But you grew up, and in spring training, you were a bat boy for the Dodgers.
Right. My parents were from New York originally, and in January of 1948, my mother's father had a gas station on Sunrise Highway in Long Island. That was the big road out from the entrance of the island from Manhattan to the Hamptons, and it was a great location. He did very well, but it's a 20-hour business, and it was snowing and raining, and one of his big clients came in and said, "Hey, Joe, I've got this motel in Tampa, Florida. I can't get there, and I thought, you got to be tired of this business. Why don't we just trade the motel for the gas station, and you and May, my grandmother, go down there and, enjoy Florida." And sometimes those moments in life where you don't really think things through, my grandfather looked at him and said, "Harry, you got it." And he threw him this grease rag, and that was the beginning of the move down to Florida permanently. He called my mom and my dad and said, "Joe, Millie, why don't you come with us and come down to Florida?" It was after the war. Mom was working for American Airlines. Dad was doing a variety of things. So they all packed up and took Route 301 from New York to Tampa. And something happened at a Stuckey's or a Horns on the way, and one of those quarter vibrating beds. And I was born December of that year in Tampa. But there's always a reason why somebody wants to trade you for something. Well, the motel was about 1.5 miles off the main highway that went from Tampa up to New York. So it had a bad location. And there were 13 little cottages. And after I was born, about another 6 months, they decided running this business wasn't very productive. So my grandfather became a welder. Dad started driving a transit bus, and Mom started working for an insurance company. And then by the time I got to be 7 in 1956, so almost 8, my dad and 2 of the gentlemen started the second Little League in Tampa. But on a Monday before that Saturday opening, Dad came home and sat down to the dinner table, and he was a Greyhound bus driver then. And he said, "You want to skip school tomorrow?" And I said, "Wow, Dad, what are we doing? You never said that before." He said, "Well, I have a charter to pick up the Brooklyn Dodgers from the Tampa airport tomorrow and take them to St. Pete to play the New York Yankees in an exhibition game." And I thought it might be a great day for you and I. Dad was a Yankee fan or a Dodger fan. Mom was a Yankee fan. Mom gloated a lot because, the Yankees had beat the Dodgers almost annually in the Fall Classic. But in the fall of '55, the Dodgers finally beat the Yankees in 7. Right. Johnny Padres, I think, threw a 5-hitter. They won 2-0. So they were the world champion Brooklyn Dodgers. So I just started collecting Topps cards. So I said, "Can I be excused?" I was an only child. And I ran into my bedroom and got 2 Have a Tampa cigar boxes out. And I had about 30 cards. And 7 of them were Brooklyn Dodger cards. And I took them to the dining room table. And I said, Dad, is this guy going to be there tomorrow? And it was Peter Reese. He says, well, we hope so. How about this guy, Dad? And it was Jim Gilliam. He said, maybe. But Dad, how about this guy right here? Jackie Robinson. Is he going to be there? Dad said, well, maybe. So I got a good night's sleep, which is rare. And I got up in the morning, put my blue jeans on and my band lawn shirt. Only guys over 60 remember band lawn shirts. They were the polo shirt at the time, but there was one in Dodger blue that I put on. And we got the bus and we drove to the tarmac of Tampa International Airport about 8. And the Dodgers were the only team to have their own plane. So about 8:15, Dad and I were standing in front of the bus, and in one of those gray pink mornings, out in the distance, we could see a plane banking, and a couple hundred yards in front of us, it lands and goes by, and it's got Dodgers on the side and a baseball on the tail, and it was the Dodger plane. So I looked at Dad, and Dad, wow, their own plane. He said, yeah, son. And the plane pulled up, and there were no concourses back then. You know, you pushed a ramp up to the plane. And it was a DC-7 prop jet, and the engine stopped, and they pushed the ramp, the door opened up, and there was Walt Alston, the great skipper. And then it was Reese, and then Hodges and Snyder and Ferrillo and the Boys of Summer, and they were the world champions. So I stood in front of the bus, and I had my baseball cards. And about 7 years ago, my wife Candace and I did a book called My Bat Boy Days. That first day was the first day of getting a chance to bat boy. And for 7, 8 years afterwards, 2 or 3 times each spring, I'd get a chance to bat boy for the Brooklyn and LA Dodgers when they came to Tampa. But this was my first experience. And we say in the book, I'm there with my cards. And as Gilliam came up, I showed my dad, and he said, that's him. And then Reese. And then Hodges, and each one, and we say in the book, it was as if they walked off the baseball cards and came to life. And, there are certain days in your life that kind of define who you become and what your dreams are. And the guys got on the bus. We went over to Al Lang Field. Tommy, you may remember that. And the bus pulled up to just outside the clubhouse, and the guys are getting this stuff, and a little gentleman comes out with boxer shorts and a strapped T-shirt, a little cigar, and he's looking at that. He says, let's go. 15 minutes of batting practice. Then he looks at me. He says, hey, kid, you want a bat boy? And I look at my dad, and he looks at me, and I like, can I? And he goes, you want to? So I said, yes, sir. He said, well, get those bats and balls out there, and they'll be out in 15 minutes. So get everything straightened up. So the bat bag was this big, and ball bag felt like it had bowling balls in it. But Dad helped me get the stuff out, and I lined up the bats, and I was putting the helmets in the slot, and I was hearing tsh, tsh. And of course the Yankees were taking batting practice, but it was Mickey Mantle hitting these towering home runs into Pinellas Bay, about 30 yards over the wall. And every kid loved Mickey. So I'm just standing there with my mouth open, and all of a sudden they hear, son, you want to play catch? And I turn around, and it's number 14, Gil Hodges. And I looked, and yes, sir. So Mom had just gotten me my first Rawlings Heart of the Hide. I think it cost about $9. And I got it off my belt, and Gil Hodges threw a little arcing ball to me, and I caught it and threw it back and threw another arc. I'm thinking, Mr. Hodges, I'm starting Little League on Saturday. I can catch. And we hear, and I turn to look at Mantle, and boom, ball hits me in the chest. And of course, Gil was such a great family man. He runs over, you okay, son? You okay? I said, yes, sir. Knocked the wind out of me a little bit. And he said, son, you weren't looking at Mickey hitting that ball, were you? And yes, sir. And then probably the first moment of somebody with a teaching lesson outside of my family, he said, son, we're the world champions. Yes, sir. And that was the beginning of that day, lugging the bats and balls. The Dodgers won. I think we looked it up in a old Sporting News, and Robinson did play, and Campanella. And I had a chance to sit on the bench and listen to Hodges and Reese talk about the Yankee pitcher and how he was holding the ball. I had no idea really what they were talking about, but they were talking about the game. And so that night, Dad and I drove home, and Mom had dinner waiting, and she started asking questions about the day. And of course, normally we say to our kids, "How was your day?" "Fine." "Taking a test?" "No." "Can I be excused?" So pay a lot of money for that. But she said, "How was your day? Who did you meet?" And I showed her the autograph ball they gave me and the 2 broken bats. And I said, and there was this funny coach out there, Mom. I mean, he really, there were a lot of words he was using that I didn't know. And my dad said, "That's okay, son. I'll tell your mother about Leo DeRocher later on." But that was it. It was my first day as a bat boy. And, we say in the book that over the next 7 or 8 years, I get to grow up with my idols. They had made that transition from Brooklyn to LA. And the LA guys, emerged, but they still had spring training in Vero Beach, Dodgertown, which was charming. And I got a chance to see that. So that was the beginning of dreaming about being a baseball player, and in particular a Dodger. And ironically, 12 years after that first day, I was drafted in the first round by the LA Dodgers.
Where did you play in the minor leagues your first year?
My first year, Tommy, I was at that time, after 2 years, you could be drafted professionally in college. And I've gone to Michigan State. I got a chance to play football and baseball there, football for Duffy Daugherty and baseball for Danny Litweiler. So out of high school, I was drafted first pick in the 3rd round by Minnesota. But I really wanted to play 2 sports and go to college. So I turned down $10,000, the big bonus offering, and went to Michigan State, one of the best choices I had ever made. And I get drafted in the supplemental round for college players. And Guy Wellman, the great regional scout for the Dodgers, had come to our house, and he started at about 11,000. By the time my mother was done with him, he was up to $40,000, a new car, and the rest of my education. So I always wonder if she would have done better than Jerry Capstein, but you never know. So Guy said, "Well, we got 2 places we can send you: Daytona Beach, which was Florida, and I had grown up playing in the humidity and the rainstorm." He said, "But we'd like to send you to Ogden, Utah. We got a manager up there that's pretty great with young guys. His name was Lasorda, and if you'd like to, wherever you send me." My dad said, "Is that up in the mountains a little bit?" And Guy said, "Yeah, it's up about 4,000 or 5,000 feet." And my dad looks at me and he said, "I think the ball will carry for you, son," because I had power, and that was one of the reasons they signed me. So Ogden was my first stop. Lasorda was my first manager, and arguably we had the greatest draft in history, because part of that draft was Buckner, Valentine, Peshoric, Say, Lopes, myself, Sandy Vance out of Stanford. I think we had 8 or 9 guys that played at least 6 to 8 years in the majors. So it was a phenomenal draft.
How many years did you stay in the minor leagues before you made it up to the bigs?
Well, we won the Pioneer League that year, and I had my contract though that I would go back to Michigan State. I had 2 years, and I wanted to finish on time. So by the time you get back, of course, it's fall semester, and then I had my contract that I would go to spring training for 2 weeks during Easter break. Then I would come back to Michigan State and finish up and join the team early June. So they sent me to Double-A, Albuquerque, for my 2nd year. Texas League, so pretty good competition. Guys were a little older, and ended up batting .372 there, and I think 17 home runs and 70-something games. And it really, everything was starting to work well, and the Dodger way to play baseball was teaching me, the fundamentals. But I still had that power, ability to go the other way with it. And with Lasorda's teaching and the great body of coaches, those first 2 years laid the foundation for my 3rd year. But I actually came up in September 1st of 1969. and put the uniform that day. And Nobi Kawana, the great clubhouse man, gave me the number 6. So it was quite an exciting day.
Well, I remember when I was with the Dodgers, you were up and you were a third baseman.
Yep.
And then the best they are, here's a first base glove, go over, because our first baseman was Wes Parker and he retired. Yeah. And we needed somebody who could catch the ball and could hit the ball, and you were a perfect fit.
Yeah. And didn't have to throw it very much because I had a shoulder separation playing football at Michigan State. And I had a good strong arm, but I never quite was able to get it up and get on top of it. So because of the separation, so had trouble throwing, and in and out of the lineup, still coming out at 2:30 in the afternoon. All of us young guys would come out early, and Dixie Walker, who was a great Dodger back in the 30s and 40s, was our batting instructor, and constantly work on getting on top of the ball and driving through it. So even though I was a guy without a position going into 73, and Ron Say had come up, and of course Ron turned out to be an excellent third baseman, I played a little outfield, but there was no real demand for a short-armed outfielder. And Walt had me pinch hitting. So the first 3 months of the year, I start to get traction. I'm leading the National League in pinch hitting, and we were struggling against lefties. And on June 23rd of 1973, we faced Cincinnati, and Freddie Norman, who used to drive Walt Olson crazy, kind of pitched like you a little bit, sinker, slider, great control, always seemed to, shut us down. So they've got us 1-0 going into the 8th inning. I think we got 2 hits, pitchers up. He says, go up there and get us going. I get a single, and nothing happens of it. We lose 1-0. So, you get about 30, 40 minutes between games, and I'm sitting there with my little turkey sandwich, and Walt walks by and he stops and he looks at me. He said, "You ever play first?" And I said, "Oh, sure." Well, I played 1 game in Little League and 1 game in AAA. I had a bad hamstring, and and Lasorda said, "We're going to keep you as close as we can to the dugout." So first was it. And he said, "Well, borrow a glove and get out there and play first tonight. I need right-handed hitting. Try not to trip over the bag." I said, "Okay." So first inning, Russell goes in the hole, throws it in the dirt. I dig it out. I think Davey goes towards the bag, throws it up the line in the 3rd inning. I come off the bag and catch it and make the tag. Ended up with 2 doubles, and I think I had about 3 RBIs. And that was the first night of me playing first, obviously, but also of Say and Russell and Lopes and myself, which was the all-time greatest infield. And so we win, and I'm sitting there in front of my locker. Tommy, those days where you've come back and you worked hard, or you've gotten an opportunity, and everything falls together, and that day happens, and you're proud of yourself for how hard you worked. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, Walt had finished with his little press conference and walked by. And he didn't stop, but I heard, "You're in there tomorrow." And Steve Yeager locker next to me. And I looked at Yeager. I said, "He's talking to you or me?" He said, "I think it's you, Garb." And I started again the next day, got a couple more hits. And that was really the beginning of, the Steve Garvey people know. Having been a defensive back, good footwork, first base became, pretty adaptable. Didn't have to throw the ball as much. And I had this uncanny ability to dig balls out of the dirt. So that next road trip, I kind of solidified first for the rest of the year, ended up batting over 300. And 74 comes along, and I put it all together and win the MVP. So the transition from third to first turned out to be a godsend, but it didn't come without a lot of work and knowing that I had to keep developing my skills defensively as I was improving offensively. And I ended up with 4 Gold Gloves at first. So I always took a lot of pride in the ability to make a difference at first for us too.
Well, I know you helped me out a lot when I would throw those ground balls to Say, who would skip them over to you, and you'd dig it out of the dirt, and it'd be it out at first base. And I just appreciated that.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we used to say, you know, throw it low, we're good to go. Throw it high, wave goodbye. So Russell used to yell at me, you know, throw the ball around between innings. Hey, Garv, get off your knees. Give me a better target. Yeah, just throw it over here. Yeah. So, but you know, I mean, our infield was a very good infield. I don't think we ever got as much credit as for what we did, because we were a very exceptional offensive team, and you and our starters and so forth. But I think we were very, very solid, and I think day in and day out that contributed to us being consistent on the defensive end. And then, of course, offensively is where we excelled.
Did you played for Lasorda in the minor leagues, right?
That's correct. Twice, Ogden, and then when I was up and down in 70 in Spokane.
In Spokane, okay. Tommy was so full of BS, but he was the best manager I ever played for.
Yeah.
Because he made you, or you being a player, go out and bust your hump for him. And that's what you're supposed to do. You don't have to scream. You don't have to yell. You don't have to do all these things. You just make it to where the players want to play for you.
Absolutely. You know, and he made it fun. He was demanding. I think he probably was as much of a psychiatrist, psychologist as any manager I ever played for, because he would learn your background. He would learn about your family and what were you a Christian or not, and who you like to hang out with, and did you always have a girlfriend? Were you married young? Did you internalize things? Or, you know, I mean, Bill Buckner used to internalize. I mean, that was his personality. Valentine, yeah, he was Italian. Tom loved him because he was Italian. Of course, Tom was a little bit Italian, but Valentine would be outgoing. He'd release everything. So he knew whether you needed a kick in the behind or an arm around the shoulder, and he challenged you. He challenged you to go out there and be the best player at your position, be the best player on the field, and keep reaching to find out how good you can be.
I know I was pitching one time and had a good game going, and had maybe the bases loaded, and the bullpen was up throwing, and he comes out and he said, "I need a ground ball here. If my life was on the line, I would want to throw a ground ball for me so I can live for tomorrow. Do you want to throw the ground ball, or do you want me to bring in Lance Rodson, I believe it was? You want me to bring in Rodson?" And I said, "Oh, I'll do it for you." He said, "Okay, do it for me." And he turned around and walked back. Well,
yeah. Well, that's it. That's the way he was. I mean, that was a pretty clean meeting on the mound. I mean, yeah. You know, I went to the mound early in my career with Tommy when he was, you know, I knew him from the minor leagues, and I never went to the mound. He goes, "What are you doing over there?" I said, "It's too ugly." You know, I mean, that language you're using is really hard on my ears, you know, which would make him laugh and choke on tobacco. But I used to, at first base, I'd say, "You don't need me. What do you need me over there? I got to run all the way over there, come back. You're going to cuss at the guy. You're going to get on him once in a while. You put your arm around him, but not very often." We would always laugh about that. So, but you're true, you know, right, Tommy? And he treated collectively all of us as Dodgers, and there was a way to play as a Dodger and so forth. But individually, I think was his greatest skill, and the ability to be able to take each one of us and really get the most out of it. And I had 3 Hall of Fame, you know, managers. Alston was one of them. He had a totally different personality and very strong man, 23 one-year contracts. When he said something, you really listened because he had thought it out and it was going to be what was good for you. Tommy talked a lot sometimes, and you had to decipher it a little bit. And then I had Dick Williams in San Diego, who was more of a taskmaster, more of a drill sergeant, very demanding, tough on young players. He used to let us older players, Gossage and Nettles and I, kind of do the heavy lifting when it came to taking care of these guys' personalities. But so I was subject to really 3 Hall of Fame managers, 3 different personalities, but 3 very successful Hall of Famers.
When we were with the Dodgers, did you enjoy when Lasorda was the manager, all the stars that would be coming in, the clubhouse and his office and all that? It was like movie central, for Pete's sake.
Right? I mean, it could be Danny Kaye. It could be Don Rickles. Sinatra would drop by. Jonathan Winters. I mean, there was a Walter Matthau. I mean, remember the Hollywood Stars games they used to have? I mean, it was a who's who. And it's different over the years, but I mean, they were the big stars back then. I've got one. Well, Tommy had always bragged about Frank Sinatra being, they were very, very close. So I think the first time that, the beginning of the Hollywood era with Tommy was really opening day, his first day as a manager. And Sinatra had always promised to sing the national anthem if Lasorda became manager. So Tommy was so proud, and Sinatra came into the clubhouse and he had a satin, Dodger jacket, and he had that baseball cap, a little bit to the side, a little jaunty. And we all went out to the dugout, and then they got the old bullpen cart, and they took Frank out to center field, and he was there, and we're standing in a row, and it's Tommy and myself and Bert Hooton. Bert had that great dry Texas humor. So Frank starts out, typical crooning Sinatra. And all of a sudden it's over. And I mean, it's not a long song anyway, but he had completely forgotten the stanza. And we're all kind of silent, right? And and I kind of peek at Lasorda, and Bert leans over. He says, "Hey, Tommy, who in the hell was that guy? He can't even sing the national anthem." And Lasorda said, "Hooton, you shut up or you won't be starting till June." And we're just laughing. But that was the beginning, of, the culture of the clubhouse and on and off the field. And I always say many a night, in Chicago, we'd go to a closed Italian restaurant with 60, 70 people in there. The owner would have all these people, and Lasorda would get a few of us and go in, and, we'd have to stay with him until 3 a.m, before the day game the next day. And wherever he went, he was the Pied Piper, of the Dodgers and baseball. Everybody loved him. And of course, Jilly, you remember Jilly Rizzo, who was Sinatra's number one guy. And Jilly had a bar and restaurant in Chicago. So when Lasorda would say to me, "Hey, Garv, come on over after dinner," I said, "Tommy, I can't do this again tonight. You're getting us in so late. We got to get to the ballpark, leave at 8, 9, 1 o'clock game." So one day though, I mean, we flew in from Pittsburgh, I think, and he takes Hooton and myself and Russell to this restaurant. We get in at 4 o'clock, go to the ballpark, and it's one of those humid July days at Wrigley Field, and the wind's blowing out, and I'm standing there for the national anthem, and Lasorda says, "Hey, Garv, you don't look very good." I said, "I don't look very good." I said, "You kept me out till 4 o'clock in the morning." And he says, "Hey, you're young. Get a couple of hits and we'll win the game, and you go back to the Drake Hotel and sleep." I said, "I don't want to sleep. We only get 6 off nights a year in Chicago here. I want to have a nice dinner. I want to go out." So he just looked at me and laughed, and I think I got an RBI double that won the game. And Harry Carey, I go on his show afterwards. You know what a character he was, and called me Stevie. He says, "You beat us again, kid." He said, Did you get a lot of rest last night?" And I said, "No, I was with Tommy at Gene and Giorgetti's." "Ah!" He said, "Don't go there tonight, son." I said, "No, sir, I promise I won't." But or Rickles coming in and going right down the row of lockers and having a joke for each guy and cutting him up, and everybody just laughing and laughing. And he'd get to me and he'd go, He said, "You're my son's favorite player. I can't." He says, "I can't say anything bad about you, but he says, I do know one thing." He said, "You're the only guy I know that when you're in the shower, you go outside to take a tinkle." And of course, I cleaned that up. Right. And the guys are laughing and laughing. But and it was good for the team. It kept everything light. You always have a few characters, and Royce and Johnstone were ours. But Tommy, again, was the Pied Piper, the ringleader. And I think a big reason, he said he never won a game, right, for us, but he set the tone for it and created the culture that allowed us to win a lot of games.
Yes, exactly. So you left the Dodgers what year?
My contract was up in '82, and so Jerry Kapstein, my agent, and I talked in the previous off season about really talking to the Dodgers, getting it out of the way, because we knew that if we didn't get anything done by the time the season started, it was going to start to build, and it was going to be a distraction. And right. And whoever thought I wouldn't be a Dodger, right? But the Dodgers had declined to really talk to Jerry, and he talked just before spring training. They said, "Well, let's wait a while." Well, every place I went, the writers, "Have you talked to or have they made you an offer?" And I said, "No, not really." And so it did build. Finally, we got to June, and both sides agreed that we wouldn't talk anymore, would wait till the season was over, which put a lot of pressure on me. And we realized they were going to use one of the young guys coming up from AAA that they thought were going to be very good players as kind of a bargaining tool. So one thing led to another. On November 15th of 1982, at that time, free agency was in infancy, but if you became a free agent, 5 teams could draft you, so to speak, to negotiate with you. And I remember being in a bank building in LA, first time the Dodgers didn't have Al Campanis do the whole deal. It was a lawyer, and time ran out, and they couldn't re-sign you at that time. It was an odd free agency. And San Francisco Giants, the Cubs, the Yankees, Houston, and the Padres were the teams that could negotiate with me. And of course, the transition ended up with San Diego.
And that was a good choice for you, because to me, you're a West Coast guy.
Yeah. And even though, from Tampa and so forth, by having been out on the West Coast from 70 on and having success, everybody thought I went to SC, or grew up in California. But, that's a matter of time and maturation and so forth. So, and by the time I got to San Diego, you knew Steinbrenner. Steinbrenner had 3 American League guys he really wanted. And he already had Don Mattingly, but Jerry Kapstein said, "Listen, Garrett, Garvey, you had Steve here, you've got good young ball players, he and Mattingly, and, you're going to start winning." And George says, "Well, I've got these 3 guys," he said, "but I'll bump it up in the press. I'll tell them, I'll put some figures in there in the press that I think are pretty close to what you wanted." So he did that. I wasn't going to play in San Francisco. Candlestick, playing there every night as a hitter is probably takes away 30% of your offense, 40. And Houston wasn't going to play in the Dome. So I get to San Diego, and Ray Kroc says he wants to meet with me, just he and I. So Ballard Smith, who was the president of the club, and Mr. Kroc's son-in-law and Jerry were kind of, waiting somewhere down the street at a restaurant. And we go into Mr. Kroc's office and we sit down, and he goes, he was about 83 then. "Stevie, I really want you here." And I said, "Well, thank you, sir. You always want to be wanted." "Yeah, and I know what you can do on the field, but I think off the field you can start to change the culture of this town." And I said, thank you. And then he goes, but I only got one problem, son. And I go, what's that, sir? He goes, I can only pay you in Big Macs and French fries. and I looked at him and I said, well, can I have them for a lifetime? He says, yeah. He says, you can have them much as you want. And he said, I'll probably find a few dollars too. He said, but you call Jerry and I'll call Ballard and I want this deal done by tomorrow. And lo and behold, the next day, the deal was done by 3 p.m. And the offer was for what we thought parity was at the time with Schmidt and Jackson and guys like that. So, and you were right. San Diego was a perfect fit for me because still in the National League, still in the National League West. I knew the pitching. It was at that point in my career at 34, it was a good place to decompress in terms of off the field. And it worked well. I mean, my second year there, 84, the team had invested in the Goose Gossage and Greg Nettles, and we ended up going to the World Series. So I had this wonderful, great career in LA, perpetuating history. And now I go to San Diego, and we really started their history after that 84 year.
When did your consecutive game streak start? With the Dodgers?
Yes, it started, about, I would say, pretty close to 77, around in there. It was 7.5 years. And the irony was I was within, I think, 15 or 18 games of breaking the record, which was held by Billy Williams, National League record. And, and I look at the schedule when the schedule comes out, 83 season. And lo and behold, when I'm going to tie the record and break the record is going to be at Dodger Stadium. And I've always thought this was divine because, now I get there, come in on a Friday, and I tie the record that night, all the fanfare and the press and the microwave trucks on the field. And it was quite the evening. And I tie the record. And the next day I break it. But the first night was interesting. You come down that hallway out of the elevator and you're so used to turning left for 15 years. I'm with John Boggs, my dear friend, and who was headed up my marketing company at the time. I start to go to my left and John grabs my army scarf. We're going this way. And I go, oh yeah, that's right. So that was the first little step in reality. And then I'm in the on-deck circle. First inning, I'm batting third. And now batting third for the San Diego Padres, Steve Garvey. And there was a few smattering of boos for the first, 10 seconds. And then everybody stood and applauded. And it was quite emotional. And I got up and Doug Harvey was behind the plate. And he said, you want to take a minute? And I said, no, I'm okay. Mike Scioscia was catching. And then the final bit of reality, I looked out in the field and you see that team that you had lobbied for and was your blood and sweat and tears for 15 years and even going back to being a bat boy was now in front of you. That Dodger uniform is in front of you now and not on you. And Jerry Royce was pitching and he kind of smiled and I smiled. But that's the breakthrough you have to have when you make transitions like that. And the next day, I think I faced Fernando and he was dealing that screwball and that cutter inside and got me out the first couple times. And I said, well, this reality thing's over, back to work. And I hit a hanging screwball to right center for a home run. And he gave me that smile as I got towards home plate. And then now it's a different time, a different chapter in your life. And next year, like I said, we put it all together and beat the Cubs and end up against the dreaded Tigers in the World Series.
Well, I tell you what, being a teammate of yours and watching you play, I know how you played. You played 100% all the time. And it was a pleasure to be on the field with you. And it was a pleasure for me to talk to you like this. And I'm going to invite you anytime you want to come back on and do the podcast, call us up. You got a spot, babe.
Well, I know where you live in Florida, so that's a vacation haven there. So, you know, yeah, I want the bed and breakfast, the whole thing. Okay, but one more thing, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you now, but the first real in-season Major League game was spring of '67, and I'm at Michigan State, getting ready for my freshman spring, and we go down to Detroit. Tigers are playing the White Sox, and you pitched that day in a doubleheader.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you were one of the first players I ever saw on the field, and then lo and behold, you know, a few years later, we become teammates, and like you said, we really appreciate each other. But you were the first guy out on that mound I saw, and boy, that guy's bringing it. You know,
the only way I is if I would hire a cab.
Oh, my Lord. Well, my friend, thank you so much. It's been an honor to be with you. And truly, let's do it again.
You got it, buddy. Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Amen.
Recording stopped.
That was good.
Yeah, sounded good.
I didn't know.
Great, guys. Great job.
Hey,
Do you expect anything other than that from me? Huh?
nothing. That was not a gold glove. That was a platinum throat right there.
What did he say?
It was